In 2008, Ukrainians attacked the X204 crossover, which was actually built on the basis of the C-Class sedan, W204. The car largely lived up to expectations. But not in everything. You can't call this car rare. From 2008 to 2015, more than 1,000 GLKs were sold in Ukraine. And many still regret that the Germans put the brakes on this topic. Many GLK no longer exists. Bad or good, reliable or not, you can't say in a nutshell. The car is complex, there are enough motors, a lot of electronics. Therefore, it is necessary to choose GLK on the secondary, and there are many offers, based on the data for each specific car. The main rule is that we do not save on engine and transmission diagnostics in the service. Otherwise, someone will have to fork out heavily. Easy on the road, good handling, generally stiff suspension, a little nervous on the road, especially on the 20 inches wheels that the dealers love to push. Pretty simple for a Mercedes, the interior of a pre-styling car and a strong, practically rust-free body. The GLK has plenty of pros and cons. However, all attention is on the motor and the notorious 7G-tronic machine. There are no systemic complaints about the gasoline engines that were under the hood of the GLK, neither to the most powerful 3.5-liter V6, nor to smaller ones in terms of output and displacement. They are not very capricious, they serve regularly, as long as the owner has the mood and the opportunity to follow them. The same can be said about the diesel versions of the GLK 220 CDI and GLK 350 CDI. There are plenty of them on the market, and, apart from not too burdensome troubles with fuel equipment, there is nothing to write them down in the penalty box either. By the way, it is the GLK 350 CDI and the pre-styling gasoline giant GLK 350 that are almost sinless. In a diesel engine, the flywheel occasionally fails if the previous owner liked to push it when starting from a traffic light. Yes, we almost forgot, one of the frequent troubles under the hood was the washer fluid reservoir. He needs to be looked after. For some reason, it is on diesels that the pump sometimes starts to flow. But this is nonsense. Transmission is more difficult. Problems for every taste. Starting with childish ones with leaking gaskets, electrical failures and overheating, and ending with more serious questions. For example, they often complain about the short resource of the torque converter, the failure of the speed sensor, or even a completely broken case or automatic transmission pump. And if by 150,000 kilometers there is still a native torque converter, ask for a weighty discount. $500 to $600 already at first, you will definitely invest in 7G-tronic. And even more. The square body is an excellent target for pebbles, hence the numerous scars. But the metal is correct, does not rot. Only rapidly fading chrome parts and, perhaps, supposedly hermetic LED lamps, which, in fact, easily part with tightness, will be frustrating. Mudguards are afraid of curbs, and without rubber bands in the back, trouble is flooding the parking sensors. Restyling in 2012 was beneficial. Firstly, the power steering with its often flowing pump has given way to electric power steering. But the main thing is that the Germans finally provided the GLK with a saloon befitting a Mercedes. The past was not only modest, but also not very persistent. The pseudo-leather of the seats and the steering wheel was already cracking before a run of 100,000 kilometers. Speaking of the chassis, you need to remember that, despite the hefty cost of its components, all problems are solved with little bloodshed. There are questions about the front strut mounts and shock absorbers with the agility control system, the resource of the wheel bearings is not happy, and the brakes in terms of mileage are very modest. Least of all complaints about the all-wheel drive system. What is the result? Do not rely too much on the premium brand when buying. Let me down. The dashing former owner is another reason to think. On diesel engines, check if the nozzles are stuck, otherwise large-scale purchases cannot be avoided. And in general it is worth ringing all the fuel equipment. Requires attention. Front shock absorbers can grunt already at the turn of 30,000 kilometers. The same, silent blocks and wrecks, from 40,000 kilometers. Even for quiet people, the suspension rarely goes more than 60,000 kilometers without intervention, as do the brakes. The resource of the front pads is 35,000 kilometers. Discs, on the other hand, travel 10 to 20,000 km more. Automatic transmission lubrication every 60,000 kilometers is the law. The box is recommended to install an external heat exchanger. Diesel machines overheat much less frequently. Mechanics consider the power part of this automatic transmission more reliable, although it also suffers from problems with oil contamination and glitches of electronics. You can't say anything in 7 lines. There is a lot of information on the forums about each of the motors. Read. Come in handy. And from the general, to monitor the tightness of the intake system, Protect from the slightest overheating and change the oil more often. In indifferent hands, these engines become a pump for money. Decor fails here, blooming aluminum rails and window frames, in 2 to 3 years, peeling door handles, 4 to 5 years, wounded chrome moldings and radiator grills, €450. The chrome-plated coating of the exhaust pipes does not differ in strength. To update, change them, you will need about €150. The parking aid is not working properly. Mirror servo crackling is common. Caution at the car wash, pressurized water can get inside the LED strips of navigation lights. Each costs €175. Well, in general, the electrician is far from the worst side of this car.